I'm Caroline Hyde. This is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, Google steps up its cloud business and sticks it to the major rival. We've got all the highlights from today's Google's Next conference. Plus, our exclusive with Google X and Udacity founder Sebastian Thrun, training the next wave of the US tech talent, one nano degree at a time. And Pinterest adds a search engine with a more personalized touch, why it scooped up Jelly, the latest project by Twitter co-founder Biz Stone. First to our lead. Google sees reliability as a competitive advantage over cloud computing leaders Amazon Web Services and Microsoft. At a company conference on Wednesday, Google Cloud Chief Diane Greene cited data from Cloud Harmony that ranked Google ahead of those companies as the most reliable cloud provider in 2016. Greene says Google Cloud is also attracting clients such as eBay and Verizon, though a broad portfolio of products focused on security. In a later speech, CEO Sundar Pichai said he sees cloud computing evolving into one of the company's core products, such as search advertising. Take a listen.
To me, Google Cloud is a natural extension of our mission to make information accessible and useful. We're just doing it for businesses. It means increasing the availability and lowering the cost of data storage and computing resources.
We also sat down with the chief scientist of artificial intelligence of Google Cloud, Fei-Fei Li, and asked her about the transformation of machine learning in cloud technology.
I think it's going to be tremendous. I think this is not only just cost saving because of the machine intelligence and data analytics. It's going to open up new businesses. For example, in financial services, suddenly we can have a better service in terms of banking, personalized banking, or in retail, we can have new ways of delivering products to customers. So it's AI and machine learning is huge. I deeply believe this is the driving force of a transformative time for our industries and enterprises.
Is this why you went into business? You left academia to come into Google? What attracted you to this, to Alphabet in particular?
So first of all, I didn't leave academia. I'm on leave from Stanford, and which is a sabbatical. And I think you're totally right. I've been a technologist for almost 20 years. And I've been working in the field of AI and machine learning, and I watched this field grow from a niche, lofty academic field into this major force of our society and the future of our business. And I want to participate and contribute in this transformation. And I thought hard about what can AI and machine learning contribute. And the key word for me is to democratize this technology. I don't want this technology to be in the hands of only a privileged few. So cloud is the best vehicle to democratize AI. It delivers the power of this technology to so many people and so many businesses.
As machine learning and AI really show what they can do, the question of ethics comes into machine learning as well. Is that something that you think businesses and academia is keeping a pace of?
I think this is an important topic that we should invite the whole society to participate. Every time there is a new technology transformation in our human civilization, that technology becomes a force of change in the way that we live, we work, we conduct our businesses, we do regulations, we create policies. This is inevitable. But the important thing is that all parts of the society participate in this discussion, and whether as an educator or as a technologist, I care deeply about this.
You talk of democratization, you talk of a cucumber farmer in Japan using Google Cloud. Is the prices going to continue to drop, do you think? Will the competition in the market as well help continue that particular trajectory?
So, Carolyn, I'm not a business person, so I'm not going to talk about price, because I don't think I have many things sensible to say. But what I want to talk about is that the competition is not just going to be price, it's going to be the products we offer, is going to be what we can give to the customers that they need. And I know, and we know, the customers are going to need powerful, easy to use AI and machine learning tools, and that's what I will be focusing on.
How do you think Google Cloud and the AI machine learning element of that is better than the rest?
So we need to look at Google as a company. Google as a company has the deepest bench in terms of AI talents and AI technology. Before I joined Google, I'm an academia, and I know that some of my best students go to Google, and I know that my Google colleagues, the engineers, the researchers, produce some of the most phenomenal work in machine learning and AI. If you look at what Google Brain is doing, the TensorFlow libraries, the work they've been doing in healthcare, they're winning challenges in AI competitions. We look at our colleagues in DeepMind, the work of AlphaGo, and many things. So I think Google is unmatched in its ability of AI technology and machine learning technology.
That's clearly what continues to attract people such as yourself. I've got to ask you about the ribbon, of course, that you're wearing right now. It is International Women's Day. I look around us, and it's not a particularly full of females.
You're
here.
being charitable.
You talked about AI being a sea of dudes. Is that still the case?
It is. I think we should acknowledge that the diversity issue in AI and STEM is continue to be an issue. It's not just gender diversity, there is other diversity. Eventually it's the diversity of thoughts.
What can businesses now that are led by men or that are looking to ensure that they have a diverse pool do as well? Is it about incentivizing more women to rise to the top?
I think it's going to be a full spectrum approach. I don't think there is one magic thing. The companies should improve their culture. The companies should help women to support their leadership and career paths. The companies should have better family benefits. The companies should be supporting diversity activities. I think there should be a assortment of efforts.
That was Fei-Fei Li, Chief Scientist of Google Cloud's AI and Machine Learning. Now, Google Cloud Chief Diane Greene also took to the stage this International Women's Day to stress the importance of diversity in Google's workforce. Take a listen.
We strive at Google Cloud to have an environment where no one needs to raise their hand, but no matter what, it's completely safe to do that. Okay. You know, I really look forward to the day when this audience is maybe 50% women. It's more fun to have diversity.
And Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg also addressed the importance of the day, writing in a Facebook post that even though women work more hours per day and more days per year than men, we earn only a small percentage of the world's income and own even less of the world's property. Now, staying with Alphabet, its unit, Nest, is said to be working on a cheaper version of its flagship thermostat. This, according to a person familiar with the matter. The new smart thermostat, which adjusts the temperature based on usage patterns, would sell for less than the $200. That's $50 less than the current version. An alarm system, digital doorbell, and updated home security camera are also in the works. Potentially good news for a unit that struggled to come out with new products. Still to come, new FCC Chair Ajit Pai spells out his agency's views on everything from media megadeals to net neutrality rules. We'll head to Washington for the details next. And a reminder that all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are now live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. right here in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. Disney CEO Bob Iger is staying put on a panel of CEOs who advised President Trump on economic matters. During a company shareholders meeting on Wednesday, an activist requested Iger leave the panel, saying his participation suggests he supports Trump's policies. Iger disagreed with the activist's view. Take a listen.
I did not believe, nor do I believe, that my membership in that group in any way endorses or supports any specific policy of the president or his administration. I think it's actually a privileged opportunity to have a voice in the room.
Now, speaking of President Trump, he met with Lorraine Powell-Jobs at the White House Wednesday to discuss immigration policy. Powell-Jobs is the widow of Apple co-founder Steve Jobs. Critics of Trump's immigration policies have often cited Steve Jobs as an example of how the U.S. has benefited from welcoming foreigners, as Jobs' biological father was a Syrian immigrant. Through her philanthropic organizations, Powell-Jobs has supported immigrants and refugees affected by Trump's executive orders. Staying in Washington, a new FCC chairman, Ajit Pai, faced Senate lawmakers for the first time since taking the role. Among the highlights of the Q&A session, Pai maintained that the FCC does not have a role in reviewing the AT&T Time Warner mega merger, and when asked about net neutrality, Pai said he supports an open internet but still opposes a regulation passed by Democrats before him. Joining us now from Washington is someone who's written extensively about these issues, Hal Singer, senior fellow at George Washington Institute for Public Policy. Hal, welcome to Bloomberg Technology. And I just want to cast my mind back a week ago, because I was in Mobile World Congress back on Tuesday in Barcelona, and I spoke to Ajit Pai, and he really outlined quite eloquently how he wants an open internet, but perhaps with a few changes. Take a listen.
I think there's a broad consensus about the need for a free and open internet. That's the internet we've had since the dawn of the internet age in the mid-1990s. And that's something I think consumers and companies alike have come to take for granted. The only question is, what regulatory framework can we adopt that both protects that core value and preserves a massive incentive to invest in infrastructure across the United States?
He's not a fan of Title II classification for broadband, and you back him up to some extent.
That's right. The two ideas, Title II, common carrier rules on the one hand and net neutrality on the other, are completely distinguishable and really have nothing to do with each other. They've been kind of unfortunately bolted together by the prior FCC, but there really is a way to enforce net neutrality protections, that is non-discrimination protections, without having to classify internet service providers as common carriers.
How?
Well, there are a few ways. I'm, of course, peddling one myself, but I think that there are a lot of voices kind of whispering in Chairman Pai's ear. I would point to the way that the FCC adjudicates discrimination complaints today in the video space. Namely, they allow independent networks to step forward and demonstrate that they've been discriminated against by a vertically integrated cable provider. There's no reason in my mind why that same adjudicatory, complaint-driven process couldn't be used to stop discriminatory acts in the internet space.
And actually, at this testimony in Washington, one of the points you raised in your writing before was brought up. You believe that actually ISPs, internet service providers, have been held back from investing.
I do, and this shouldn't come as a big surprise, right? If you threaten ISPs with price discrimination, now to be clear, we had a very specific form of price discrimination from the 2015 Open Internet Order, and that is the ISPs could not raise any funds from the largest edge providers, Netflix and Google, YouTube, and the like. But there was also a veiled threat of price discrimination, which the FCC forbore from. But there's always a lurking threat that the FCC could undo that forbearance and actually impose rate regulation on the prices that ISPs charge. So to no surprise, we saw a slight pullback in 2015. According to one study by U.S. Telecom and a second study by PPI, we saw a slight pullback. In 2015 relative to 2014, the last time that ISPs got to operate outside of the confines of common carrier regulation. And according to my latest numbers, in 2016, we saw a significant pullback on the order of around 5% of broadband capital in the United States relative to 2014.
But how often many feel that people hold back investment because of lack of certainty? And we spoke not only to Ajit Pai, but also Tom Wheeler at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. And he spelled out, look, any unwinding of this deal wouldn't happen quickly. Have a listen.
When we put out our open internet rules, we built an extensive record. And it was reviewed and affirmed strongly by the court. Whether you can come back in a couple of years later and say, oh, things have changed so dramatically that you need to reverse all those other decisions, those decisions that have been affirmed by the court, this is going to be a long process.
A long process.
That quote cracks me up because I don't know if you watched the oral arguments when the FCC's lawyer tried to defend the change in circumstance that the FCC cited as a prerequisite of reclassifying internet providers. He couldn't give an answer, and it was actually one of the more humorous parts of the hearing. And the answer that there was no answer. There was no changed circumstance in any kind of regulatory or economic circumstance. The only thing that changed were the politics. So the notion that there's some very steep and sophisticated justification for how we got to reclassification in 2015 is just a ruse.
Very briefly, as politics change, of course, many feel that potentially regulation might ease up. And are we right, is the market right to assume that with Ajit Pai at the helm, M&A might go through that little bit easier?
I think that's probably fair. I think that the prior FCC tended to lean heavily on what are called structural rules. That is, they weren't that concerned about what econometric models might say about likely price effects from a merger, but instead they were trying to kind of, as a bean counting exercise, the number of unique, say, broadcasters in a given market. Well, the latest empirical evidence suggests that that bean counting exercise doesn't nicely map into price effects, and I think that the new chairman will have a more open and modern view when it comes to understanding the economic literature.
We'll see how many agree. Hal Singer of the George Washington Institute of Public Policy. Wonderful to have your viewpoints today. Thank you. Now, tomorrow on Bloomberg Television, join us for an exclusive interview with none other than JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon. That's at 7:45 a.m. New York time. The conversation will focus on President Trump's first 100 days, on Brexit and on global banking. Coming up, Pinterest is adding a search engine to its business with the help of Twitter co-founder Biz Stone. Details next. This is Bloomberg. In the latest funding board, online grocery delivery startup Instacart has raised a $400 million round of venture funding. That's according to people familiar with the deal. With the new funds, the San Francisco-based company has a valuation of $3.4 billion. The investment was led by Sequoia Capital, which had led an earlier round. Now, Pinterest is buying Jelly, the Q&A search engine app led by Twitter co-founder Biz Stone. The acquisition could be a sign of Pinterest's aim to boost interaction on its visual search and discovery platform. If you're not familiar with Jelly, it lets people ask questions, then uses an algorithm to pair them with experts who may have the answer, aiming to be a human-powered search engine. Bloomberg Technology reporter Sarah Fryer joins me now to discuss the deal. I'm vaguely confused as to how this particularly gets folded into Pinterest. How does it?
Well, it may not be folded into Pinterest. I talked with Biz Stone earlier today. He says they haven't quite made the decision yet about how the Jelly technology will live on, if it lives on. What they do want to bring in is this expertise that Biz and his co-founder have about testing out these different models for search. They've worked with audio, they've worked with photo, they've worked with questions, and helping Pinterest move into search in a little bit more of a strategic way.
It seems almost, dare we call it, a bit of an acqui-hire. Is it a good ending for Jelly? Is this what Biz Stone and co-founders would have wanted?
Well, certainly when companies go to raise money, this is something that Biz said today, they need to also think about their other options. Because as we've seen in the tech industry, it's very difficult to find an exit that values you at the same level as these private market investors do. And so to get acquired by a company like Pinterest, I do feel like that is a very safe landing for a company that had some trouble finding mass popularity.
You're right, looking at the popularity, currently ranked number 1,293 for social networking category in the iPhone.
So they weren't going to be the next Snapchat. Maybe they could have worked a little harder at it, put a little more money into it, but I'm sure that they started in 2013. They've been doing it for a long time. So this is a really good fit for what the team at Jelly is really interested in, and certainly what Pinterest has been investing more and more in.
What about, therefore, where we think direction of Pinterest is going now? Because they obviously are looking to become almost a search engine in and of themselves.
Yes. So Pinterest has tried to shy away from being labeled as a social media company. We've lumped them in with Facebook and Twitter in the past, but now we need to look at Pinterest and what they're doing with some of their more computer image technology and what they're trying to do with search. And one of the most interesting things they came up with recently is this kind of visual search where, say, if I talked about, I really like that shirt that you're wearing, and if I could take a picture of it and put it through the Pinterest algorithm, it would show me other shirts that look like the shirt that you're wearing. And of course, that has a lot of applications. When I was at Pinterest headquarters the other day, I took a picture of some kale, and then all of a sudden, Pinterest showed me all these kale recipes.
Dreamy.
that could go along with, so it would recognize that you're taking a picture of kale. So that's one of the ways that they're trying to go into search. Of course, that is a technology that we've already seen very popular in Asia. So interesting as to what Jelly will bring to the table, but certainly a lot of questions. Biz told me that he and the Pinterest co-founder had very deep conversations about all of the possibilities.
Jelly plus kale doesn't make a nice recipe, but very California of you to be taking pictures of the kale. Sarah, great to have you on as ever, of course. That is Bloomberg Technology reporter Sarah Fryer on all things Jelly and Pinterest. Now, coming up, our exclusive conversation with Udacity and Google X founder Sebastian Thrun. That's a German pronunciation. We'll get his take on the latest in automated driving. That's next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. You can now listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the US on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Elisa Parenti, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's start with a check of your first word news. British Prime Minister Theresa May most likely will trigger Brexit toward the end of March. That is according to an EU diplomat. May first has to wait for her Brexit bill to pass Parliament, which probably will happen next week. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, says the U.S. has to see positive action from North Korea before it can begin discussions on reducing tensions on the Korean Peninsula. That is in response to calls from China for both nations to avoid a head-on collision. China wants North Korea to stop nuclear activities and the U.S. to suspend military drills with South Korea. Islamic State has claimed responsibility for an attack on the main military hospital in Kabul, Afghanistan. Authorities say more than 30 people were killed and more than 50 wounded. Donald Tusk is closing in on a second term as EU Council president. That is despite fierce opposition within his native Poland, where some favor another top politician over the former prime minister. Tusk's term ends May 31st. A summit to elect the next president is tomorrow. And Iceland will be the first in the world to make employers prove they offer equal pay regardless of gender, ethnicity, sexuality, or nationality. The country made the announcement today to mark International Women's Day. Iceland says it will introduce the legislation to Parliament this month. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,600 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Elisa Parenti. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5:30 p.m. Wednesday here in New York, already 6:30 Thursday morning in Hong Kong. I'm joined by Bloomberg's David Ingles with a look at the markets. David, good morning.
Hi, Elisa. I mean, we're looking at a fairly subdued session as far as volumes are concerned. I mean, you look at New Zealand, that's the first market out of the gates. Dead flat there. Futures for Sydney, which opens up in about 29 minutes, minus 12. Dollar yen's higher, so that might just do enough to lift the Nikkei 225 and Japanese stocks overall when that market opens up in about 90 minutes. But that being said, though, just one data point to watch out for today across the Asia-Pacific. It's the inflation report out of China. Now, the other big story is South Korea. We have our very own Sherry on live out of Seoul today. There's a lot of big news happening there. You have the court trial for Samsung's Fei-Fei Li beginning. Tomorrow, the Constitutional Court decides on the fate, of course, of the suspended president and all the things, of course, that Elisa mentioned earlier in North Korea. So expect a lot of headlines out of Korea today, and of course, we'll bring them to you once we do get them. Lots to talk about this Thursday across the Asia-Pacific. I'm David Ingles in Hong Kong. More from BTech next.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde. Sebastian Thrun is known to be one of the most innovative minds in Silicon Valley. A research professor at Stanford University, former Google fellow, and of course, founder of Google X, where he led various projects like autonomous cars and Google Glass. Now, well, he's moved to found Udacity, the online education tech startup that offers courses teaching skills for specialized jobs in areas like self-driving cars. The company just announced 2 new nano degree programs in robotics and digital marketing, along with 19 new hiring partnerships. We caught up with Sebastian Thrun and asked, well, how these new partnerships will help students land jobs at companies like Facebook and Google in the future.
We have companies as far ranging from Google X all the way to iRobot and many others. And these are tech companies. These are Silicon Valley type tech companies that really want the latest and best talent. There's a huge gap in the world between the talent that exists today and the talent that companies want. And what Udacity does is it gives every person a chance to upskill themselves and get the right talent so they can find a job.
The timing here is fascinating, Sebastian, because it was just yesterday that we were discussing the executive order put in by Donald Trump, which will be making it harder for individuals to get H-1B visas. This is something that's depended on by Silicon Valley in particular to get the right sort of talent. Can talent be fostered within the United States through nano degrees such as yourself?
Absolutely, yes. We have over 330 million people. There's amazing talent in this country. And while we have the world's best university system, it's not available for everybody. What Udacity does is it makes education accessible, and it really gives people the type of skills that are really brand new, bleeding edge. We have, for example, a self-driving car nano degree. Udacity trains more self-driving car engineers than all universities combined at this point. And we have companies like Mercedes and Waymo and Tesla and many others who then end up hiring those graduates.
How much has potentially there been a worry, a concern? A lot of these technology degrees and new schools, technology schools that have been cropping up, haven't always had the employees, the employee and indeed the amount of employment that many had hoped. Has that tarnished Udacity as well, or do you think people understand that the rates at which you can manage to get these sorts of people into the workforce and quickly?
Well, given our current growth rate, I believe our students trust us. We are working really, really, really hard to keep our costs down and get people jobs. And that's why we make things like money-back guarantees and so on, and promise students their tuition back if they can't find a job. So we hold ourselves accountable. The difference between us and everybody else is we derive our content directly from those companies and end up hiring those students. We go to top companies like Amazon and Facebook and ask them, what would it take for you to hire a person? And then they say, well, the following 8 projects is what we need to prove proficiency, and that becomes our curriculum.
Talk to me about the rest of the world then. Before, we have seen tech talent coming to Silicon Valley, particularly from India, particularly from China and other parts of the world, Europe. Are those people now going to be remaining and creating jobs and moving into companies at home now if the visa applications become harder, if moving to the United States becomes less palatable?
I can tell you, I talk about Silicon Valley and the type of jobs here, but the same talent is needed around the world. Every company now is a mobile company because of Android and iOS. Every company now is a machine learning and big data company because there's so much data out there and companies are beginning to realize they have to use the data. So our students find jobs at Flipkart, at Didi in China, another partner of ours, and many other places. We have, last year we opened, I'm very proud of this, we opened an office in Saudi Arabia. So in Saudi Arabia, it turns out women are not allowed to drive. So they're all online, they all speak English, and we are able to empower women in Saudi Arabia in a way that's never happened before.
Udacity, from a global perspective, you're talking about Saudi Arabia. Are there any areas of the globe you're not yet that you'd like to be?
Oh my God, I want to be in every household, and I would love to make it entirely free if I could survive as a company. I'd love to get many more scholarships as students. We have over 8,000 scholarships at this point. The reason is there's a huge inequity in the world. Like if you take, say, Africa, the Middle East, you put in Indonesia, maybe India, and South America, you have more than half the world's population. You won't even find a single top 100 university. That doesn't mean those people are all dumb and don't deserve education. It just means they don't get it. And what we can do, and we are doing, is bringing great education to all those people as well.
You've announced some really interesting competitions, for example, with Didi over in China in particular. Where do you think Silicon Valley needs to be worried about right now in terms of competition, in terms of the talent of technologists and indeed technology companies?
Well, China has done an extraordinary job in tech. And if you look at the biggest tech companies, 4 out of 10 are actually Chinese at this point. None are European, where I'm from, unfortunately. But I think Silicon Valley will remain the source of like crazy disruptive innovation. I think the people that think new things and build something completely out of the box tend to eventually come here and work with us and others. I've seen China doing a phenomenally great job, in part because China is very large. It's like 4 times as big as the United States. As a result, the market is very large. And that's why there's some really great Chinese companies that do, by lo and behold, I think what American companies did first.
So will US always be the #1 market for you?
Oh boy, I wish I had a prophet in my family to understand where the world is going. But I love the United States. I'm a by choice a citizen. I love what we do here. And I love the fact that you can be an entrepreneur and really invent new things here and get away with it, which is great. Like, we are, in some sense, the University of Silicon Valley now. We're reinventing what a university should be. And we can just do this, which is really, really great.
Do you think that's a risk under the new administration?
I'm still in my wait and see mode. Obviously, there's many things to be said on both sides, but I think everybody, including the president, has the good of this country at heart. And everybody that I talked to, yesterday I spent half a day with Governor Kasich, for example, really, really worry about how can we take the great American workers and make them fit for 21st century technology. So actually, I think Udacity is Silicon Valley's response in part to this nation, to take people along, to take everybody along and leave nobody behind.
Competition can often spark creativity, and we're seeing plenty of competition at the moment between, well, you used to work at the self-driving unit of Google X, which has now spun off to become Waymo, and Uber at the moment. This is very much in the limelight because we, as we know, Google and Waymo are looking at Uber with a court case. How important do you think this is? How concerning do you think this is that individuals are potentially taking technology from other companies?
I can't comment on this court case. I used to work with all these people for most of my career. But here's an interesting fact. Udacity is now a self-driving car company. Turns out we are registered and we have our students build our code. And this afternoon we'll show a video where we've driven about 35 miles from Mountain View to San Francisco, completely hands-off 100%, using our students in the world to write the code.
That was Udacity founder Sebastian Thrun. And a story we're following, BlackBerry's car software was listed as a potential target for CIA hackers. This according to documents released by WikiLeaks as part of a massive document dump Tuesday. The notes list BlackBerry's QNX software as one of the several potential mission areas for a particular branch that also worked with UK spy agencies to break into Apple iPhones, Android phones and Samsung smart TVs. More on that story a little later this hour. Coming up, why $50 million in seed money could go a long way in funding tech hardware, even as the likes of GoPro and Fitbit struggle and investors take ahead. This is Bloomberg. Lemnos, a seed-stage hardware-focused venture firm, announced its latest $50 million fund. The move comes at a time when tech hardware heavyweights were showing some signs of struggle, with Fitbit's revenue plummeting by 19% and demand for GoPro's Hero camera waning. Joining us now for more on where is hot in hardware is Lemnos co-founder and partner Jeremy Conrad. Wonderful to have you on. And
thanks for having me.
This is a big step. You had $2 million as your first fund, $20 million as your second, now $50 million as your third. Congratulations, and let me know how it changes. The size of fund, does that change your investment strategy?
Yeah, so when we raised our $20 million fund, we had some specific theses around kind of what kind of companies we invest in and what our check size would be. And over that fund, that changed slightly. And so, when we went out to raise this time, we said we think $50 million is the right amount because we do pre-seed and seed stage hardware companies and software that relates to hardware. So one, we can pro-rata a little bit more, so kind of keep doubling down on our winners. But also, there's a lot of companies that may just need a slightly bigger check to start. So with this fund, we can lead or co-lead like rounds between $500,000 and $3 million in size.
How much do you keep aside for follow-on rounds? How hard is that to navigate as a story for
it really depends on the type of companies, but typically you're reserving like 2 or 3 to 1 for every dollar you invest.
And you've got, what is it, 40 or so in your portfolio now?
Yeah, so we just did our 39th investment. We've got a couple of ones that we're looking at right now, and they've gone on to raise about $300 million. And what's interesting is to see kind of how they've grown, very similar to a lot of their software counterparts.
Talk to me about the exit strategies, though, because you've had 2 significant exits, but 2 out of 39. When does the pace start to pick up? Does it? Is it in for the long haul? Explain the outlook.
You know, I think all venture is in for the long haul. When you talk to Series A firms, when they invest, they don't expect to really exit for 5 to 7 years after that. And what we're seeing is that, you know, we're 5.5 years old as a firm, so we've got some companies that are doing really well. But if you want those, you know, those big winners, those unicorns, those billion-dollar exits, it just takes a little bit of time.
How how competitive is it out there as a seed VC right now, particularly in hardware? Is everyone trying to muscle in on the earlier and earlier stages?
You know, we find it to be pretty competitive, but for us, that's why we're verticalized. And also, what makes us really different is that we really embed with our companies. So we only want to do 5 to 8 deals a year. And there's 3 partners, and we really dig in with them because when you're just starting that hardware company, there's so much that can go wrong. But also, for all types of startups, we think having, you know, people who've been around the block at that table with you greatly increases your chance of success.
Talk to me about those verticals that you're in. Where's hot that you're really looking to
So
add to?
one area we're super excited about is robotics. And you're seeing kind of this overall macro trend getting driven by things like self-driving cars, but also things like industrial IoT, consumer electronics. And then with this fund, you know, we call them applied sensor companies, but software as it relates to hardware. So we were looking at a company that's doing computer vision related to robotics. And we think a lot of those companies can scale really effectively.
So robotics is hot. Where isn't hot? Because I feel like I've just, for the last beginning of this week, we've been talking about GoPro at record lows when it comes to its share price. Fitbit fell out of favor of the Christmas period. How do you ensure that the companies you're getting into, I'm sure some of them might be consumer facing, but some of them aren't, how do they not be faddy?
So it really is about good long-term business models. I think on the consumer side, it's a great question to ask, what could have Dropcam been? You know, when they announced their Series C, they had a 42% attach rate for their recurring revenue service. That's basically all margin. So if that company was around today, or if GoPro or Fitbit had a bigger recurring revenue, they'd be great. But I'd also say that, you know, these are both $1.5 billion public companies. And the reason they were even able to go public is because they're hardware. That real revenue that the market can actually evaluate lets them go public, gives everyone liquidity, and I think those are still great companies.
So when you're looking at the market space, are you finding it's more B2B hardware
Absolutely.
that you're looking at right now?
So about 75% of our deals are B2B in some sense. You know, I think that, you know, and this is true in venture in general, if you look at the consumer web, there tends to be fewer bigger winners. So you have Facebook, but on hardware you have Apple. So when you can really do hardware, consumer hardware right, they can be gigantic successes. But the bread and butter, I think, is really going to be these B2B or industrial companies.
The intricate workings of your portfolio companies. Have you got many immigrants? Are you worried about some of your companies when we have the administration changing the rules of the game to a certain extent?
We definitely have a number of immigrants in our portfolio, and you know, for us, we're big supporters of the H-1B and also just kind of startup visa. So a lot of people come to the United States, get masters, graduates, undergrads, and then they have to go back home. And so the founders in our portfolio that are immigrants, it's like they work hard, they're thrilled to be here. And I actually grew up down in Long Beach, which we have tons of Cambodians and Vietnamese immigrants. And so for us, we think it's a real tragedy to kind of really shut the door.
Well, we hope that certainly the companies that you still see tend to flourish, and indeed we'll see how many you fund with this $50 million that you just got in. Thank you very much indeed. Wonderful to have you on the show. That was Lemnos co-founder and partner Jeremy Conrad joining us there. Now tomorrow on Bloomberg Television, join us for an exclusive interview with a pretty tech-savvy banker, JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon. That's at 7:45 a.m. New York time. The conversation will focus mainly on President Trump's first 100 days, on Brexit, and on global banking. Coming up, WikiLeaks exposes alleged CIA spying techniques, and Samsung smart TVs are getting some unwanted attention. More on South Korean giant's latest debacle. This is Bloomberg. Now, SoftBank is planning to sell a 25% stake in Arm Holdings to the massive $100 billion vision fund it's creating with partners. That's according to people familiar with the matter, who said that lead investors had expressed interest in including the chipmaker in their portfolio. SoftBank will get about $8 billion for the shares, and it's separate from the $25 billion the company's already contributing to the fund. Now, sticking with ARM Holdings, Microsoft will use chips powered by technology from ARM in machines that run its cloud services. This move could potentially threaten Intel's dominance in the profitable market for data center processors. The software giant plans to incorporate ARM processors' chips as it develops a new cloud server design to be discussed at a summit today in California. ARM licenses chip designs to manufacturers. It is owned now, of course, by Japan's SoftBank. And it's more headaches for Samsung. According to documents released by WikiLeaks, Samsung smart TVs could be used to spy on their users. The claim is that Samsung smart TVs have a microphone designed to take voice commands, which can pick up and transmit information while the device appears to be switched off. Samsung says it's aware of the WikiLeaks report and is urgently looking into the matter. Now, Samsung wasn't the only company named in the documents. Apple and Google also got a mention, but the South Korean tech giant is already hurting from other recent debacles. Most recently, the de facto head J.Y. Li preparing to stand trial for charges of bribery and embezzlement. Joining us some more live from Tokyo, Bloomberg's Peter Elstrom, who's across Samsung all the time for us. First of all, the WikiLeaks reports. Just how damaging is this? They've responded saying they're looking into it urgently.
Right. Well, as you mentioned, there were many computing devices that were mentioned in that report from WikiLeaks, from Apple phones to Android phones. But this is sort of the last thing that Samsung needs right now. They're trying to get back on track, of course, after the troubles with the Note 7 smartphone that was bursting into flame last year. They're poised to introduce the next smartphone, and so they don't need any more hits to their brand name at this point. As you mentioned, the WikiLeaks documents show that the CIA had been using a program called Weeping Angel to be able to convert these smart TVs into something that could look like it was turned off, but it would actually be monitoring what was going on in the room. So yet, not a good thing for them.
Not a good thing when it's a product element, and also, meanwhile, at the helm of the entire company, J.Y. Li going in to face court once again. Explain to us just how much the investigation into the executives of Samsung seems to have broadened out.
That's right. Today in Asia, where it's Thursday, these will be the preliminary hearings for the trial. It's not clear at this point whether J.Y. Li himself is going to appear, but the attorneys from both sides will appear, and they'll lay out the time frame for the trial. One thing that's sort of striking about this investigation is how quickly it's moving at this point. The special prosecutor was set up and was tasked with investigating these allegations of trading favors at the highest level of government and business, and he was only given about 90 days to do that, which is very, very quick by international standards. Certainly when you look at some of the big scandals in the U.S., that's lightning fast. He asked for an extension, a 30-day investigation, and the same administration of the president, who's been impeached, denied him the extra 30 days to keep digging. They also won't let him into the president's residence to be able to continue the investigation. So he's kind of playing a very quick game right now, and now the trial is going to begin, and that's going to move pretty quickly too.
How is Asia responding? I mean, the investor base doesn't seem to be. We've seen Samsung near all-time highs when you're looking at the share price. But is there concern that indeed J.Y. Li could end up in prison? What does that mean for the business?
Well, it is a high hurdle to prove that he personally was involved in some of these payments. Now, Samsung has denied any sort of wrongdoing here. They've said that they did give tens of millions of dollars in payments to this confidant of the president, Park, but they've said that was not in exchange for payment. So there's a high hurdle for the lawyer, the prosecutor in this case, to be able to actually prove that J.Y. Li himself was involved in this. As you mentioned, the Samsung business has been continuing quite strong. The shares are near an all-time high at this point. The chips business and the display businesses in particular have been doing quite well. So that's kind of bolstered them, and now they're going to come out with this new smartphone at the end of the month, so we'll see how that plays out.
And one last element to be playing out is potentially looking for a bit of a PR coup, mainly from the United States, because it looks like they're looking at manufacturing more in the U.S.
That's right. This is not the smartphone business, but the appliance business. The company has said that they're looking for new manufacturing facilities in the U.S. They do some of that at this point, and they may move some of this manufacturing of things like ovens and washing machines into the U.S. We'll see. They said at this point that they haven't made any final decisions on that front, but we should hear something relatively soon.
Peter Elstrom, always great to get your perspective. Bloomberg's managing editor for Asia Technology in a beautiful morning in Tokyo. Now that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Join us Thursday for an in-depth look at Snap with some of the analysts now scrutinizing the company's financials post-IPO. Remember, all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are now live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg TV, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. San Francisco. This is Bloomberg.